Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Leather History, a Fireside Chat. I'm Doug OKeeffe, the host and producer of the chats, which are a program of the Leather Archives and Museum. Today is a sort of a cold Saturday. It's December 7th, 2024, and I am sitting down today with today's guest, Butch Fenton. Butch is one of the founders of the Harbormasters in Portland, Maine. But you're actually out of Boston, am I correct on that?
No, we live in Portland.
Okay, in Portland, all right. And we were graciously introduced by my IML brother from 2004, Scott Erickson. So thank you, Scott. And so I have to ask you, Butch, how do you feel about being interviewed about your leather history?
Well, it's happened once before, or twice before, once by a local person here in Portland and once by someone who is they did the interview in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at one of the events there.
Okay. How do you feel about your community being recognized a little bit?
Uh good, good. Long overdue.
Okay. How do you, what do you think has been missing then?
I think Leathermen in general have been um maybe overlooked by mainstream media because of course if you think of someone in leather, you think of all the bad things that might come up in mind. So a friend of mine was just saying that he was just rewatching um, one of the older movies, and I thought, wow, that conjured up a lot of things in my mind.
Such
That
as?
problem.
Huh?
Oh well, of the danger of the leather side.
Were you talking about the movie Cruising by chance?
Yes.
Ah, what were your thoughts on that? I haven't had anyone bring that up yet.
So watching it, I mean, you could like think about what was going to happen and maybe prejudge what might happen, and so I could totally see all the good parts and bad parts of the movie. But it's I've been approached by a person in a park before who was quasi going to rob me, but they were just as afraid as I was, and I said, and that didn't happen. So, um, but yeah, I could put myself there.
What do you think the movie was accurate for its time and what it depicted?
Well, first time, I think, yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Wow. Because I've had a couple of people say, sort of in passing, they felt it was too dark. It didn't really represent the leather community they knew.
Well, because they were inside the leather community. Being inside the leather community looking out is totally different than being outside looking in.
Okay, good point. Very good point. Okay. It's interesting you brought that up. Truly, no one ever has in an interview before. So, but please tell us a little bit about where you're from and a bit about your family.
So I'm originally from Warren, Ohio. Um, one of six children, oldest boy, third in line.
Okay. Anything that sets your family apart from anyone else?
Uh, I don't think so. I had a very loving and understanding mother and and Archie Bunker dad.
Ah, ah. How
And
so?
Archie, well, in the good way of Archie Bunker, when you got to know and saw the film, like when he was kissed by Sammy Davis Jr.,
Oh,
things like that. I moved into an all, not all black, but predominantly black neighborhood. When I bought my first house, my dad said, "Boy, what are you doing?" And I said, "I have no children. I don't have anybody to send to school." You know, and that was, I was from in Ohio. It's a very mixed neighborhood and state in their northeast area. And he was a very Archie Bunker, but he didn't know, and he was anti whatever he didn't know.
ah.
So when he found out I was gay, he was totally not knowing. And so, as he grew um, into knowing my friends and things like that, he was very, very supportive. My mother and he came to a bar that we in Youngstown called the Troubadour.
Oh, I remember
Uh,
that.
oh, do you? So we had the downstairs bar. There was a downstairs bar for a while that the Young Sound Exiles, the club, we ran that on Friday and Saturday nights. And he said something about, and I said, and my mother and he were sitting next to each other and they kissed. I said, hey, hey, hey. He said, well, we're allowed to do that. I said, remember, you two are the ones who are queer here.
Oh my.
And my mother said, oh my, I never thought of that.
Oh boy. You really don't
Yeah.
take hostages, do you? Ah, yeah, but it's interesting you brought up the troubadour because when we prepared for this interview, we discovered we grew up only about an hour away from one another.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I'm only, as I said, not even 50 miles, 60 miles at the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, up in the snow belt of northeastern Ohio.
But you're younger than I am.
I'm only 21, you know. So, yeah, but I remember going to the Troubadour when I was in college days.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't as great then as it was earlier because it was a bit shoddy at
Oh,
that
Youngstown
time.
was a bit shoddy.
Yeah, but it's really coincidental, truly, to be that near. But so tell us a little bit about your coming out, exploring your sexuality a little bit. Something to do with a boy next door?
Aha, yeah. So there are many people on my street. One was my next door neighbor, and two of my cousins lived on the street that I lived on. And they were about 5 to 6 years older than I am.
Hmm,
And they were probably the first people that were actively a sexual partner with me.
okay.
And so in my life, I mean, I was a good schoolboy, and I did everything I was supposed to do. I dated girls and went to the prom, and then took my date home, and then crawled out my bedroom window and went to suck out the boy next door.
Oh my gosh. Did you have still like I don't know, a cummerbund, or I mean, were you wearing a tux? I can't even
Oh
imagine
no, I took that off and left it behind.
that. My
Although
God.
I have had sex wearing a tuxedo before. So,
Who am I? So you went to suck off the boy next door. How did things progress from there?
well, I mean, I thought, I had no idea about sex is one thing, but, about society and a lifestyle. So it wasn't until I was in the military and in the Navy and went to different places off base on leave to either Chicago or Milwaukee before I actually knew that there was such thing as a gay bar or a gay society at all.
My gosh. If you didn't know any of this, how did the concept of sucking off the neighbor come up?
It was just, I mean, we played around and he was old enough to know that he had that done before. And he and my oldest cousin had played around before. And so they were more experienced than I, and they taught me different things. And yeah.
I'm afraid to ask what they taught you.
They taught me all the needed things to know.
Now, are any of these men out openly gay today?
Um, no, I don't think any of them are. The boy who used to live next door, he got married and then he divorced his wife. And I saw him once afterwards, and I don't know what he was doing. My older cousin definitely is not, and he's also married. But I don't usually go back to Ohio. I try to avoid it. It's not a really great place.
Yeah, yeah. But you mentioned the Navy. When we talked about this in preparation for this interview, you told me about the discovery of the gay world and society. I found that fascinating while this was happening with the Navy. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, we can, gaydar is very active, and so you can find someone who is probably gay, and so just like sitting with them, having lunch, different times, around the barracks, and so finally conversations would be private enough to say something.
Hmm,
And there were a couple of people who, because I was in the hospital corps school, and then I'm stationed as a hospital corpsman there, had private rooms. So, I mean, we could have people in our room. There were two of us in a room. So you could like either pick your roommate, or if you didn't pick the right roommate, you could at least have private time.
Okay. Interesting. So some of I guess I was a little, what do you call it? Surprised because generally you don't hear of people being out when they're in the armed services, armed forces, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't out to public, We were very private to ourselves, but I mean, still, once you left the base and dressed in civilian clothes, it was different.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the gay community and world you discovered in Chicago in those days.
So, first bar, one of the bars I went to, I don't remember the name of, it was close to the train station, because that's the way I always used to commute, was from Great Lakes on the train to either Chicago or Milwaukee. And
Yes.
so there were local gay bars pretty much close to both of them. And that's where I found out the closest one, because, first thing you want to do when you get off the base is, number one, have a drink, and number two, meet somebody you might be interested in playing around with. So you
Well,
take it where you could.
wow. Okay. How did you navigate this new world?
Well, just by like talking to people and going with them and to different places. Both towns had a YMCA, was very active and very interesting, you know. And
Do tell.
yeah, yeah.
How were they interesting?
Well, I mean, people would leave their doors open, and but that's what I was told. Well, if you're interested in someone coming into your room, just leave your door open a little bit, and they did.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I'm sure you made a few new friends.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was easy making friends because everyone was in the same boat. Everyone was away from
Part of the
home.
fun.
Everyone was lonely. Everyone was horny. We were young.
Wild. Now, this was what, in the late 60s or early 70s, isn't that
Early
right?
70s. Early 70s. Yeah.
Okay. That had to be a totally different world from anything you'd know today.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the bars you remember or things that you encountered, or do I not want to know?
Maybe you might want to know. Bars mostly, and I got introduced to a couple bartenders, and so then they got me going to different bars, and they knew other bartenders, and so between the fact that I was in the military, I was young, and I knew bartenders. I mean, drinks were good
Okay.
because
Okay.
yeah, and they would always introduce me to people as this is Butch, and he's in the Navy. Oh, yeah, so it was,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have a fetish now, not to that type of uniform, but I mean, I have met many people along the way who anybody in a military uniform or was an active military person was a very sought after thing. I found nothing great about it because I was wearing it myself.
Yeah. You said you didn't think anything of the uniforms at that time. What about this time now?
Well, yeah. So leather uniforms are very attractive to me. I do like the uniform look. I do like the Tom of Finland look. I used to have a Tom of Finland type body.
Oh,
Yeah, but not so much anymore. I'm an old man.
so was there anything surprising, shocking that you experienced suddenly in these new places?
Well, it's shocking to so going back to just people, I didn't number one. I thought I was a rarity, you know, like a
Sure.
one in a million. And until I found out that there are so many gay people and that there were bars specific to them, a whole society that they had their own papers, their newspapers. Certainly, I was at that time the Mattachine Society was just coming and being about, and I
Yeah.
thought, wow, this is just totally different than I ever thought. I never thought people would be able to be so open and stuff about their private life.
You mentioned the Mattachine Society. I think there will be audience members unfamiliar with that. Would you please explain to them what that is?
And so didn't really attend much of their meetings, but they were um, people who were openly gay and talked openly about gay life, and they published papers around the university system. When I really got to know them around the Chicago, and then the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and both Madison,
Hmm.
and they were very open and very. I remember some riots that they caused because of them being out and wanting to make it things easier for other people.
Wow.
And very much a legal advocate for people who were being harassed for one thing or another.
And did you attend many of these, or
Maybe two, maybe one in Milwaukee and one in Chicago, both.
okay?
Um, they were mostly older people. Um, then, of course, remember me at that time, I was 19 years old, so most people were older.
Can imagine what somebody at 25 must have appeared, but but fascinating. I mean, I've heard people talk of it, but not many people really delve into it very much.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you brought that up. I'm still sort of trying to wrap my head around the fact that it was so easy for you to go into these bars and then sort of step into this world. Was it really as easy as you're depicting?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, number one, they wanted military people there. They saw it as a draw, you
Okay.
know, and as long as you were plus legal drinking age then was 18.
Okay. Yeah.
That was in that brief time where the legal drinking age came down. And so I was there legally. I was there sometimes, but not rarely, but not often in a military uniform. Every once in a while, I would stop off on my way out of the train station. I would still have my uniform on before I changed,
Uh,
and oftentimes I would change in their bathroom.
okay.
That
Yeah.
that was quite a feat.
I can imagine.
Yeah, you had many people wanting to help you change your clothes.
I would have been concerned about them getting dirty, on the floors in there. So, what did you do with it after you changed? Did they have somewhere you could put it?
I had a duffel bag with me.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. That's so fascinating. I can't imagine that that it would have been that simple, but who am I?
Yep.
So, is there anything about the Chicago community you remember then? The bars you went to, any people you knew?
Um, in Chicago, but I didn't really get introduced to Chicago bars other than the local ones that my friends tend to bar at or near. But my introduction to my current lifestyle, the leather lifestyle, happened in Milwaukee for the first time,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that's where I went to live right after I got out of the military. I was in Milwaukee for about 2 years,
What were you doing
and
there?
I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy, so I became an operating room technician and worked in the OR. And then when I really wanted to go back to go to nursing school, I moved back to Ohio to my parents' home, and I went back to Ohio to live and go to school.
Let's take the step back, though, to Milwaukee. You said that's where you
Yep.
were introduced to the leather lifestyle. Tell us how
Yes.
that happened.
It happened at a picnic in the middle of the summer. Number one, it was kind of like bizarre in the fact that two people in the middle of summer showed up to this picnic on their motorcycle in leather. So I
Hey.
thought, wow, this is different in many ways. And so growing up in especially northeastern Ohio, in Chicago area, some people in the military, when they were alone, um, they were more feminine than not. And
Oh,
I thought, yeah, and I thought I that was my, well, if you're gay, then that must be what you do, you know.
sure.
Until I saw these two men. Yeah, they were very much a Tom and Finland type look,
Uh,
and they were very hot. and they took off their leather jackets and put them on the ground. That's what they sat on, and they kissed and were very affectionate. And I thought, wow, this is. I mean, I got a hard on instantly just watching these people laying on my belly, thinking, oh my God,
Wild.
yeah. And that was my introduction. And then I was told by some of my friends, well, if you like that leather look, instead of coming to Milwaukee, you should go to Chicago. I said, well, it's closer to Great Lakes in Chicago than it is in Milwaukee. But why do you say that? And then he said, well, there's this bar there called the Gold Coast. And so that's when I was told about that. And I was told about, well, I said, well, what about a place to stay? And I said, well, strangely enough, there's a bathhouse right across the street from the Gold
Ah,
Coast called the Barracks. And so you don't need to worry about a place to stay either. I said,
wow.
oh, okay. Interesting to me.
So tell us about going there.
Uh, well, many interesting times at the Gold Coast, but mostly I was a watcher in the beginning because I'm really not assure myself. But going to the barracks was a very good place to be. I mean, a very active place. Lots of sex. Oh my God, there's 4 or 5 people, sex at night.
Weren't you the lucky
Back then
one?
it wasn't. Well, I wasn't a one deal and done person then. Um, and so I could stay up late and have a good time. I really actually crawled, to the bus station in the morning to get out of there on Saturday or Sunday morning to,
Excuse
so
me.
I could get back to base. But yeah, very, very interesting.
So if it was interesting to go into some of these bars, by the time you got into Gold Coast, that had to be still a whole nother animal.
Yes. It turned me
What?
into much more of a watcher than a doer.
Okay.
And so then people would tell me different things about, that's where I learned about the hanky code, and
Tell
so
us about, so what did you learn about that?
well, I meant that I found out there were certain colors that I would be very interested in, and certain colors I wouldn't want to be interested in at all. Uh,
Such
and
as?
so, yeah, and so it was interesting, and the fact that when you had your leather, just different things you would put on a leather jacket. Would you put a chain on your leather jacket? Would you put a whistle on your leather jacket? All different things, and how to dress and what to wear, what not to wear. How if you would not wear underwear. I was always an underwear person until that time, and then people said, "Well, you might not want to wear underwear." I said, "Why would you not wear underwear?" And they showed me how to dress with no underwear and make it so how your package would show better with no underwear on.
My goodness. But we're still coming back to the hankies. What hankies interested you?
In that time, uh, just light blue and dark blue.
Which side?
Um, Either
Oh, all
at
right.
that time, yeah.
So at that time, how did it change as time went on?
Well, I certainly learned that I would never wear yellow in the right, but I didn't mind it in the left.
Okay.
Um, I was educated enough to learn to be a pretty good fister, so I would wear red in my left. I like my ability to go to the bathroom too well to wear it in the right.
Ah, ah, my gosh.
But now,
Fascinating.
black um, in the left. I'll wear most colors in the left now.
Okay. Okay. What won't you wear? What colors are
Brown,
simply not
brown.
acceptable? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, brown, and I not gray, particularly because I'm not into bondage. To me, bondage is too, um, as I always used to say, it's too time consuming.
I can relate. Yeah.
Uh,
Fascinating. Now, how did that grow once you met these men in Milwaukee?
so yeah, in Milwaukee, it taught me how to cruise. It taught me how to be maybe more confident in myself once I knew that there were so many other gay people. And so I went back to Ohio, living in Ohio, being more self-assured And
Good.
so, and then went from those two bars, then to I met a boy and would go back and forth to Washington D.C. and he lived there, and that's where I was introduced to the original Eagle in D.C.
Do tell. Tell us about that.
Well, that was a great place. I mean, I got to really enjoy that place a lot. I mean, got to know many people there on a regular, got to know some of the bartenders there. And it's very sad when that Eagle closed and they had to move the premises to a different place. But
Yeah.
also went to I was, the people I've never been a good dancer. So it didn't bother me that you couldn't dance at the original Eagle. But
Okay.
some of the people it really did. And so they opened the Eagle in Exile down the block. And
Okay.
that bartenders there only wore boots or sneakers and a jockstrap. And that was their total apparel.
Okay.
And that was again a very first thing for me. I had never seen anyone in a bar that naked before. But yeah, and so that was a good time. I like DC a lot, and there was a lot. There's a lot of military people still there. And you can pick them out. Their shoes are a dead giveaway. And you can always tell whether they're officers or enlisted people by their shoes. Um,
Okay.
and the haircuts.
Yeah. Now, how how can it had to be very interesting to think who some of the people there might have been. Did you ever see anything there that you felt might have been like a national security risk or anything?
No, but people said to me one time, "Don't let people know you're gay in the military because they treat you differently." I said, "What do you mean they treat me differently?" He said, "Well, they see you as a national security risk because the people might blackmail you, thinking, well, if you don't do this for me, I'll tell them you're gay." No big
Hmm.
deal. And then don't ask, don't tell. Later on came out, so I don't know whether that affected people or not. But I was long out of the military after that.
So, but why were you staying in DC? You said it was due to a boy, but what was he doing there?
Well, he worked for the National Red Cross or the International Red Cross. And so that's where he was working.
Got it.
And I went back and forth, and he was like maybe wanting to leave DC. DC was very expensive to live. And he lived in a house with three other men, two other men.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, he was looking maybe to move. And so I brought him back to live with me in Ohio, in my
Okay.
mother's home.
My
Yeah.
goodness. But what do you feel you really took away from the DC experience? What did you learn there?
Oh, confidence, confidence. I mean, it, and also it was the very first time that in the relationship, um, that I was more the aggressor than the receiver in
Ooh.
most things.
Okay.
I was probably about 22 at the time, 23, and I was taught by observation how to be more aggressive. Um, I was in the Eagle, and this one man kept looking at me and walked back and forth. And finally, then there was something going on. There was someone talking, and he then stood right in front of me, probably trying to
Ah.
show off his better attributes. And I said to him, I said, "What the fuck are you doing standing right in front of me?" And he turned around really quickly and said, "Oh, sorry, sir." And then he
Ah.
continued to walk back and forth. And anyway, I went to the bathroom and he followed me to the bathroom. And I was peeing in the toilet and he like stood outside the stall door. And I popped the door up. I reached out and grabbed his shirt and pulled him in and slammed him against the stall door. I said, "What the fuck are you doing standing out and watching me pee?" And I said, "Does that excite you?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Oh, it does it?" And I said, "Why don't you get down there and get a real good look?" So that was the first time I had sex in a bathroom stall.
Good for
And
you.
and so when he was getting off, he came all over my shoe. And I said, and he started to like buckle his belt up and get to leave. I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Clean up this mess." And he like, like, I don't have anything. I said, get down there, lick that fucking mess up. And I pushed his face down on my shoe, and he licked his cum up off my shoe.
Wow, good
I,
for you.
well,
What do you think you, sorry,
after he left, I closed the door and said, what the fuck did I ever do to do that?
why do you think? What turned the corner for you there?
I wish I could tell you.
Okay.
I guess just being there often enough and seeing the fact that, um, you know, I don't know, it seemed natural.
But back home at your mother's house, how did that go? Bringing basically a
Yeah.
boyfriend into the place.
Yes. And so, as I said, my mother had six children. Most of them had left their home at one time and came back to live there. I came back and brought a boyfriend back with me. My sister divorced her husband and brought two children back with her.
Wow.
At one time, there were like 12 or 13 people living in this house. We
Wow.
were all very cramped, but very close. Money was not an issue because everybody got paid at a different time. So we were all able to contribute to the household expenses. My parents had an
Good.
above ground pool that we used to entertain different people a lot. I had after hours parties at the house. And my mother and father both got very quick education about gay people and many different aspects of the gay community. And
Wild.
they were very, very accepting. They're
Wild.
very, yeah, they've always been very close to my partners. I had one partner who passed away, and my father was very close to him.
Hmm. I'm glad that worked so well. I can't
Yeah,
say that a lot
yeah.
of families would have done that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you eventually, did you not go on to Toledo at some point?
I met my first husband in Toledo.
Okay.
He was living in St. Louis at the time, and I was living in Youngstown. And
Okay.
we both went to Toledo for the Glass City Champions run. Glass City Champions were
Glass A Champions Run.
Glass City
Oh,
Champions.
Glass City. Okay. Sorry.
Toledo is the Glass City.
Yes. Okay.
And so that's where we were, and we met, and it very much disturbed me when I was going to have to go home and without him. And so our club, the Youngstown Exiles, were scheduled to go to St. Louis the very next weekend for a bar night. One of our members had known someone who lived there, and so I said, "Well, let's go. Why not?" And so I think there were about four or five of us who drove across, and it wasn't a bad trip at all. I-70 across,
Yeah.
and it was very very good. And then that man was younger, and his boyfriend was an older guy, but liked only young men, and he was reaching his point to be too old to live with him. And
Oh,
so, yeah, when we were there, he just said, well, "Why don't you go back with them?" And so we did. We took him after knowing this man for a week and a half. We brought him back to live with us in Ohio.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
My first menage a trois.
How did you navigate that? How did you manage it?
It was okay. I mean, it, I don't know. You kind of roll with the punches there. Um, it
Okay.
did teach a lot about respect, I guess. Um, about tolerance, about how to not be jealous. Um, I learned that sometimes, but then other times it doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, well. So why the move to Maine? What brought that up?
So this same young man was originally from Maine,
Hmm.
and so he was in Ohio, and Ohio didn't have really great employment at that time. So he said, "I can't really find work here, and I don't find it comfortable to live here without working." So he moved back to Ohio, and I moved shortly, maybe like 2 months afterwards. I moved back. I moved to Maine also.
Okay. Okay. Now, tell us about moving into this environment. It was very different from what you knew.
Yeah, number one, Maine. If you Maine was very not culturally diverse at all. I mean, when I first went there, um, one of the bar owners had a African American boyfriend, and he was the talk of the town. My God, how could you have a black boyfriend? That was just, I mean, it was unheard of.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Um, and there are not many people living in Portland who are people of color at all, of any color.
Yeah.
Um, it was very much a white state, especially the area where I live in the southern part. But I mean, it was very open in some respects. There was even at that time a very accepting gay community, fairly large for a small populous state.
Okay.
Um, and as long as you stayed south of Augusta, the capital, you're okay. You go north of that, it gets very dark very quickly.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Now, what were your first impressions of the scene there?
So good. I mean, there were the only thing. So being after the in different places with leather bars, we certainly had no leather bars here in Portland, Maine.
Right.
And so I thought that was severely lacking. Many of the people I knew or got to know were a very feminine group. Um, Many drags. It's very much a drag city at that point. But people seemed to get along, and they had good support from the straight community in that respect, I think. But it certainly was lacking in when the five of us got together to form the Harbormasters. Our main statement of purpose was to provide to our community a positive gay male image.
Okay. But what does that mean?
Well, I guess it means a lot of things to a lot of people. But we weren't anti drag, but certainly we were trying to be more of a masculine appearance than what we saw as being currently there.
So let's come to the Harbor Masters because you said there were five of you that got together. Tell us who were you five?
Okay, so the five of us were my partner at that time, Ralph Cusack, and he then went on to work at one of the bars. The Cycles was the name of that bar. It
Okay.
became Portland's first leather bar.
Okay.
Yes, and myself. So I was a nurse at one of the local hospitals. Two men who owned Cycles, Tom Corbett and Tom St. John.
Okay.
Tom Corbett had come from New York, and Tom St. John had come from California.
Okay.
And the fifth person was a friend of theirs. That was John Preston.
Okay. Now, John, I have a little bit of a blurb here, was an author, photographer, known for his work in publishing, Drummer Magazine, and he also wrote, and this I think the audience may find fascinating, the novel Mr. Benson,
Yes.
published in Drummer Magazine. Tell us a little bit about him, about that.
So Preston was two different people totally. But his public persona, and everybody knew him as, and he was always not John, not Preston, but John Preston. It was like it was one word.
Oh, I
And
see.
that one word was always a very masculine, very SM um, persona, and totally a top person until you got to know Preston. And Preston never wore boots until later on in his life. He always
Oh,
wore LL Bean loafers. He never had a leather vest until we told him he had to buy one. And if he would go up and reach up and tweak his nipple, he would go, "Ow!" I said, you have to at least say "ouch, fucker" or something. You can't really say "ow."
my
But
gosh.
but that was the five of us.
Okay. Now, what drew you guys together to do this?
Again, coming from different places and all different parts of the United States to a place where we thought was a very wanting. I mean, once we started to do different events and like start to hold some little fundraising type things, we got a lot of very good response.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and so it was a very positive thing. Um, People went on to do different things in the community. We would host different events, and so I thought what we did and the way we did it, we had our first run, a club run, on our very first anniversary, and so I
Okay.
mean it was because of the different people's connections. We all sent out invitations to our closest relatives and friends, and we got a huge response of like almost 60, 75 people on our
Wow.
very first event. Yeah, so we're thrilled.
Wow. But I want to take one step over to Cycles
Yeah.
Bar. How did that become the leather bar?
Well, it's where I mean it was not where we were formed. We were formed at one of the local bars because Cycles had not opened yet.
Okay.
They were John and Tom and Tom were in the process of setting the bar up, getting things done, and my husband at that time had stopped. He had an attack of appendicitis, so
Ooh.
he was out of work. So they said, "Well, when you come back to work, why don't you come back and work as a bartender for us?" And so he
Okay.
left the. He was a sailmaker at a local boatyard. So we went
Wow.
to work there. So between the two of them and him, we were got to know each other, and we opened up our meetings to different people there, and so the club was able to grow quickly.
Wow.
Cycles had a poster when they first opened up. It was an arm like this flexing and something in a hand, maybe a beer in the hand, and that arm used to belong to or belongs to the man who was my first husband.
My gosh. Wow. How did the bar uh, progress?
Um, so even though it was a necessary bar at that time, when we had a Mr. Northeast drummer contest there.
Okay.
Um, it was kind of like the 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 contest had been held. Not no, we were the first people to hold it. So the Harbormasters were the first people to hold Mr. Northeast drummer,
Okay, wonderful.
and so we had it there for like 2, 3 years, and then we lost our bar because Cycles went out of business and became um, the Unicorn, a lesbian bar.
Okay, well, at least it's in the family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so then that contest went to Boston, and the
Okay.
Mr. New England Leather contest at that point happened in Boston. But I
Uh,
mean, we got a very good response for like a shorter period of time. But then people wanted to go to a bigger city, I think, to have more of a collective to draw from. It always, so we go different places to events, and we said, well, we have 10 people from Portland to the event. And we think that's great, seeing as how our people to draw from is significantly smaller. We go
yes.
someplace in Boston has 30. So they have two-thirds more people than what we have there. Yes, but I mean, how many more thousands of people don't you have to draw from?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah. Now, like, isn't Harbormasters now in its 42nd year? Isn't that
it
correct?
is. It
Yeah, that's
is.
a good long time.
It is.
Now, undoubtedly, they've faced a lot of challenges over the years. There's no way you couldn't have. How did some of these challenges impact you, such as AIDS or other things that came up in the community?
Yeah. So just time, I guess, was on our side in the beginning because we gained so many members so quickly. And then the AIDS epidemic happened, and it devastated the club. There were at least two of the former members died. Um,
Gosh. Yeah.
yeah, and John Preston was one of them.
Oh,
And so we had several people pass away that were active people in the organization. One was Maine's first AIDS case. A friend of ours, we called him Toy. His name was Stephen Gentile. He was a social worker that we kidnapped. The Harbormasters were on a bar run to. We were going to Syracuse, New York.
okay.
So we left on a Friday early, and then we drove to Albany. We did a bar night at the Waterworks maybe at the time,
Okay.
and the Orangeman of New York was that was their home bar, and we met this young man. We spent the night there. We actually tied him up and we drug him out to our car. And he said, "We said this is your last chance. Either you're going with us or you're not." He said, "Will somebody feed my cat?" And so he had no clothes with him. He had nothing, but we were at that time all common size. And so we shared clothes with him and we made him feel comfortable. He had just gotten out of school, and so he was either thinking of going to Buffalo or
Okay.
to Portland, Maine to start his social worker career. And that was good enough to make him come to Portland, Maine. So he came back with us, and maybe 2 years after that, he became Maine's first AIDS case.
Oh my gosh. So, how did it progress still on? I mean, every group is going to have issues and dramas and
Yeah.
problems. How did you negotiate or navigate some of those issues within your group to keep it stable?
Yeah. I mean, some people just left just due to life or death.
Hmm.
And other people left because of differences of opinion. I often tell people that, the city of Boston originally only had two clubs, and then the others formed because of people breaking off and forming their own fractions. Um, Portland was not big enough to have that happen, but certainly people did break away in groups and just no longer attend.
Yeah.
And we recovered back and forth until when I divorced my first husband. It was at that time it caused a pretty big rift in our organization. Some people were on his side, some people were on my side, and
Mhm.
but I mean, to each other, I mean, they did a pretty good job about keeping their personal feelings themselves. I have to credit my friends in the group. They did, they both. I mean, and I never knew that some people stay in touch with Ralph and didn't tell me that, but I didn't really care. I mean, um, it was a split that needed to happen, and after 33 years. Um, Someone once I joked with someone once. They found out they found out I got divorced, and they said, "How could you like divorce after 33 years?" I said, "We considered you a part of like an institution." I said,
Sure.
"Well, that's okay if you want to spend your life in an institution." And so that was a big part of the of our break. Reduced our membership a lot, and then right after that was the COVID. So and COVID was very devastating too.
Yeah. But what do you feel in all this time has been the Harbormasters' sort of greatest achievements?
Number one, just the fact that we're able to join together in really a place that I would have never thought. When
Mm.
looking back, the Leather Club would really flourish. Um, our associations and our close friendships with people all over the globe. We used to go to Toronto to the runs up there. We
Mm.
went to as far south as DC a lot, um, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, to Pittsburgh, into Canada. Right now, we have people from. There's a Canadian member of our group who comes down and visits us fairly regular. One of our newest members is actually a resident of the UK.
Oh, wow.
He's been in the country now for maybe 3, 4 years, but still is a resident of the UK. And so we travel quite a bit, and
Okay.
that's very, very helpful.
How helpful.
Well, it gets you to know other people, and when you see other people and their troubles are the same troubles you have. The location is just different. And so, well, how do you navigate like the COVID thing?
Uh,
Well, So we learned to do video meetings, stuff like that,
Okay. Yeah.
And so we learned a lot from other people.
Fantastic. What do you feel would be anything you might consider something negative that impact other than like AIDS or COVID that has impacted the Harbormasters?
I think people are deciding that that they really have to have their things that their way. I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned. That we're all very different people, and I've always been very much an advocate that the Harbormasters are their strongest when we're at our most diverse. We've had female members, we've had a female president, we've had trans members. And to me, we used to have a person in our group that was Senator Susan Collins, Chief of Staff.
Wow.
Yeah,
My
and when
gosh.
he passed away, and Susan Collins took that very very hard. And the night of his viewing hours at the funeral home, she posted Maine State Guards at his door.
Wild. Now, you've been in this community forever and you've accomplished quite a lot. How do you want to be remembered by your community or the community?
I guess as a person who just never stopped trying, because certainly there's a lot to do and a lot we all would like to accomplish, and you can't do it all like right away. And so, even though the Harbormasters has membership up and down, I think the fact that we never stopped trying about trying to have a safe place for people to be.
Okay. Now, the question I like to ask everyone. What's the biggest misconception about you?
I think biggest probably think that I'm a total. It depends on depends on who you ask.
Sure.
Many people think I'm just a total top and can be a total asshole. Um, I don't know where they get that idea. um, yeah, and so I think that I'm a singularity type of person, and I'm not at all.
Okay. Hmm. Now, if you could change anything about your history and everything you've learned in this community, would you change anything?
I don't think so. It's
Okay.
really what made me get to and where I am today.
Okay.
Sometimes but wasn't easy. Yeah, but I don't think I'd change anything.
Wild. Now, I always love to ask as well, somewhere out there are going to be people who are new to this community in some capacity. If they want to become involved in the community or in the Harbormasters or in any situation, what advice can you offer them?
So I've had two young men come to live with me in my life. Um, three come the one who brought me here. Um, and I think we did a good job about introducing them to our community. I think the biggest thing I would tell people is number one, try to be safe, try to be true to yourself, because my goal would not be to change anyone from what they are, who they are, but then to attach themselves, at least in a friendship type of way, to someone and just have a mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Butch Fenton, this has been fascinating. And I'm very grateful that we've had this opportunity to do this interview for Inside Leather History, a fireside chat.
When you actually post my name, because when I got married, I hyphenated my second marriage, so my name is Fenton Snell, Snell,
I better write that down. Snell.
ELL.
Okay. Yes, we can do that.
Right.
Well, I'm going to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish you a great weekend, and we will see you on the internet.
All right.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the Fireside Chat channel for more chapters in the history of leather. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe.